Tesla investors are anxiously waiting for Tesla to drop version 12.4 of their full self-driving system. This is the version that Elon Musk has said will be 5 to 10 times better. It's now being rolled out to employees, and we have a sneak peek at the first video taken of how well it drives. Plus, it looks like FSD is getting closer to launching in China. After a recent update, Chinese employee vehicles are showing wording suggesting that the employee FSD beta program is there. Is FSD 12.4 on the March of Nines? Are we seeing a delay? That's a conversation we'll have today, and we'll have Hans Nelson joining us. He has his own YouTube channel called Hansi Nelson, and he does really good research on FSD and the progress. Thank you so much, Hans.
Thanks for having me, Herbert.
Let's start with the news of 12.4. We've been waiting for this. Now, we know that it's now being rolled out to employees. We don't know yet all of employees. When we're now filming this today, we had assumed that by now we would actually see this rolled out wide release. That hasn't happened. So later we'll talk about whether or not we're still on the March of Nines. This is a person who shared this screenshot of FSD 12.4. This did not come from either of these users on X. We don't know exactly who it came from, but I can't wait to try the new vision-based attention monitoring. You can see that this is the actual screenshot that this employee had in his car. FSD upgrades the city streets driving stack to a single end-to-end neural net trained on millions of video clips. That's the same conversation we had before. So the question is, if 12.4 is late, we're not in the March of Nines. Why? Then time is being spent on regressions or inferior performance, which by nature is unpredictable and thus not indicating rapidly increasing repeatable gains in reliability. Let's talk about that. But before we get there, let's go ahead and show some of the video that we had here. This is the person showing that they actually have 12.4 in their their car, that they're selecting it, that it's available there. And then I also have taken their 30-minute video and I did it 4 times. So while I'm playing this, why don't you explain what you're thinking is happening with 12.4?
So it's interesting because Elon had said that we were supposed to get this already, a week and some change ago. And it's taking a little bit longer to roll out to customers. And for it to be close enough to where he thought it was going to roll out inside of a week, but then to have this pause basically means that there was something that showed up in the very last stage of the QA process for 12.4 that basically either he just was personally unaware of it or that the team didn't anticipate. And so that's what I think Wes is referring to. And for people who don't know, Wes is a former project manager for Tesla Autopilot. And so he does have some context to have some insight here and some understanding of how all of this works from the inside of Tesla in the past that should give him an ability to make good analysis and have good insight here. So anyways, what he's saying is that the fact that we are running into unknown unknowns, and because we don't know what they are and we can't plan for them, we don't know how long they're going to take to fix. And all of that means that we're not making consistent, repeatable gains that allow us to say, hey, yes, by the end of the summer, we should be on, we'll say 12.8 or whatever, just because we don't know how long it's going to take. And it is a big question whether the added time that it's taking for us to get to 12.4, does that impact how much longer it's going to take us to get to 12.5 or not? Is 12.5's development on an independent quality assurance validation process, or is its validation process dependent on 12.4? We really don't know what the answer to that question is yet. And since we don't know, then it's hard to say with confidence that, yes, we are kind of in this 10 times, we talked about this, I think last week or the week before, that 12.4 is supposed to be 10 times less miles per intervention than 12.3. And if that was going to be the case, why is it taking so long to roll out? This is kind of strange. So now we've got some question marks that are introduced around whether that is or is not true. Apparently, however it's breaking kind of in a new and novel way. And that's really somewhat to be expected in the way that these neural nets are trained from end to end with new set of data, that it probably is going to, like, whatever is going to cause you issues is very likely to be something new. It's not going to be the same problem that you had before because the training set is new. And the hardware that you're using to train it now is a larger um, training cluster. And so the issues that are going to be kind of uh, baked into the neural net somewhere are going to move. They're not going to stay in the same place and therefore be solved by the exact same things. So that's kind of what we're looking at. I think that it's exciting still to see that, hey, 12.4 is in the hands of employees. Um, and it's one of those things that if we see it roll out to customers sometime here in this week and the delay was only a week long, well, then it seems like probably a minor hiccup. If it takes us more than 7 days from now again to get this into the hands of customers, then it starts to look like maybe a little bit bigger issue. So it's, one of those scenarios where we are on, I would kind of disagree with Wes in saying that we're not on an exponential progress. We just don't know, like, exponentials are hard to predict because you've got two different variables going on. First, like, what is the magnitude of the exponential that you're on? Is it a squared? Is it a cubed? Is it a quintupled? Or because that will have a large impact on the rate of progress. But then the other thing is, where are you at on that curve? Because if you're at the bottom of the curve versus only a few steps forward, that makes a large amount of difference as well. And so it's just difficult to predict exactly what the rate of progress will be moving forward because you don't know the status of all of those things. But it does seem like the release cadence is putting us on an early exponential path. And so the question is just, how much longer do we have to keep solving some issues before we get into the really, really rapid part of the exponential?
Okay. Well, I mean, so right, it's maybe delayed by a few days, by a week. But when we're looking at this video here, this is a 30-minute video, and I just sped it up by 4 times, and it was perfect. It drove incredibly well. This is the only video we've seen of 12.4 out there. But you have didn't you speak to another employee
Yeah, I
who was
have
playing with that? Yeah.
a separate piece of anecdotal evidence, and it's secondhand. So I don't know this employee directly, but I know someone who knows someone who has 12.4 in their car, and they were driving around in a major metropolitan area last week. And I think they drove over an hour with zero input to the car from them. They did not touch the steering wheel. They did not touch the accelerator. They did not touch the brakes. FSD drove them from their parking spot to all through town and then to their destination and parked. And the vision only driver monitoring system worked so well that, yeah, they didn't even have to do any of the, zero nags, zero steering wheel touches to make sure that, he was paying attention. And so that's, multiple points of data that say when it works correctly, that it can work very well and be, I think that driver nag thing, like we talked about a couple weeks ago, that's one of the main issues and complaints that customers have right now, is that the nag was getting to be very frustrating and making the system feel much less convenient to use. And so if this really makes a huge step forward in solving, even if it's just most of the time, like if you removed 90% of those nags, like that would be big. But to potentially remove 100% of the nags, that is really, a huge step forward. And so to see that system already in place and appearing to work, that's a big data point that gives us some, if they are having a setback in rolling out 12.4, but we see that 12.4 is a large leap forward in functionality, it makes it a little bit more excusable. It's like if 12.4 didn't get us anything extra hardly and they were having issues, well, that would feel like the progress is not very meaningful. But if you are slowing down a little bit, but it's still a big step forward, then you're still a big step forward.
Yeah, that's exactly the point. And if it's good. So far, anecdotal from your friend, anecdotal from this one video that we saw of the employee, it's looking like it's really good. I'm going to play the video of the auto park of 12.4, and people are saying that it's still very slow. It's, it's the same as what we have now with 12.3s and 12.2s even. What did you see this, and do you have any comment about this auto park feature?
I hadn't seen this clip specifically, but it is good to see what appears to be vision only auto park working correctly. I think this is going to be one where we have to see lots of people put it through
Yeah.
lots of different parking scenarios to really get a gauge on whether or not it works as well as the former versions did. But obviously, like that's the end state. It will be able to do those things. I'm highly confident of that.
hmm I mean, again, there's nothing new with this. We've already seen auto park. It's all about, banish, letting it drive through. We didn't see that quite at this point. And we don't know yet if 12.4 actually has banish and summon. In a previous tweet that Elon sent out, he actually did say that it will show up in 12.4. We've not seen it. We have not seen it in the code here, in the screenshots that this employee shared. He just talked about that it's vision-based monitoring now, and 12.4. They didn't say anything about these two new features. So that one I'm a little bit, I'll be a little disappointed if those two don't show up. So we'll see about that. But in
Definitely
other
by
news,
12.5. Yeah, I would hope to
right?
see those. It seems like actually Smart Summon is one of those 2 weeks things that
Yeah,
it's been 2 weeks for only about 2 years now that we were supposed to get actually Smart Summon.
actually, Smart Summon. Yeah, it's taken forever. Um, which is curious why, right? Because they even showed Ashok Kalaswamy did a whole demo on it, saying how the ego, the car, can actually plan and actually can see the whole parking lot, and how it used to take forever to get to the spot. Then it figured it out planning, and it figured out how to do it in one shot, kind of thing. They already showed that a year ago. So okay. Um,
Yeah. My guess is they must have, it's one of those problems. It's probably like 90% there, 90% left to go.
mm,
That
yeah.
they had made huge progress and it felt like they were almost there. But then that almost there portion seems like it's almost impossible to solve. And I think it's all a function of planning, that getting the planning side, like it's not the perception side of the stack that needs work to finish where they are now all the way to get to actually smart summon. And I think that's where, as long as we anticipate that there's going to be continued progress in the ability of artificial intelligence as a field in general to be able to reason and plan, then it will be solvable. Like we can always come back to the proof case that humans are able to do this planning with our neural nets and our eyes. Therefore, a digital neural net is capable of doing the same planning i- combined with vision. It's just how long? We don't know yet.
Okay. We'll wait 2 weeks. We'll see. So this is the news from China. This Chris Zhang, he's a very credible follow on X. And he said, I can confirm that since the spring update, some Tesla China employees' cars have had the words Employee FSD Beta Program registered on them. But no features can be enabled yet. But there's words right on the employees' cars. So this is after a recent update, Chinese employee vehicles displayed wording connected to the Employee FSD Beta Program. The vehicle displayed settings related to being involved in multiple initial beta groups, including Employee Wave 1 plan registered. So despite the appearance of related settings, vehicles haven't enabled any of the features yet, including those linked to multiple initial beta groups. The recent government barriers have been released. So it looks like that we're headed in this direction. um, this is good news, right? We're seeing it actually in cars in China, FSD beta. Thoughts on that?
Yeah, it seems like clear indication that Tesla is planning to release this soon in China. And that, of course, to do that, they have to have their entire QA process set up in China. And I think we'll find out whenever the first employees do start to get their waves. But they're just laying the groundwork of and deciding, okay, who's in wave one, who's in wave two, how are we going to QA our China specific version of FSD once it gets there, because we can't just roll it directly out from the US based version to Chinese customers without having it go through its own separate validation process. And so this is them preparing that validation process. That said, obviously they haven't got all of the approvals. Either they haven't got all the approvals necessary, or, the other possibility is that the China specific version of FSD just is not ready yet. It could be either one of those two scenarios, and we don't know. But just because they have made all these preparations is not a guarantee that they will be able to do anything with this soon. We just kind of have to wait and see on that. It looks like, the indications give us grounds to be hopeful, and we just have to continue to keep a close eye on it, which obviously Herbert and I will help you do as we try to every week.
I love it. Thank you so much, Hans. So let's continue this evaluation of whether or not this is delayed or not, right? So this is on May 22nd. This West that we talked about a little earlier said that it should have gone out to employees by now. This is May 22nd. That's a week ago. So, if it's late to employees and it's just now being rolled out, we still don't even know if it's widely released to all employees. He's saying that that's already late. Is this any more thoughts about how late are we? Because if it's late since the 22nd and it hasn't come in, are we 2 weeks late? Are we 3 weeks late?
It seems like we're at least a week and a half, potentially 2 weeks late on 12.4 at this point in time. And we'll just have to continue to see if that extends. I think that especially if it's particularly late, that's where I'll echo the comments I made earlier. It'll be very interesting to see how long it takes then to get to 12.5. If we see 12.5 take a long time, there's a scenario where if 12.4 has issues and they decide that 12.5 does not have those same issues, and they know that 12.5 is going to be ready really soon, they could skip 12.4 entirely. And if that happens, then that does help us to have a little bit more confidence that the development of different versions going through that QA process is independent of one another, instead of one being, tied to the success of the previous version. Um, and but the other alternative is that we could see, hey, it takes us 2 or 3 or 4 extra weeks to get to 12.4, and then we don't hear anything about 12.5 for another month or month and a half or 2 months. And that, like we've said all along, it's the rate of progress in between these versions that is the thing that really helps us to feel like either we are rapidly approaching full completion of FSD, or we've hit another one of those local maximums that Elon likes to talk about. And now it's going to be a slog to have to go back and figure out, okay, how do we get out of this maximum that we're at now, which means you have to go down into a valley, you have to regress, the things have to get worse, you have to figure out how to relay the foundation and then start again. Hopefully we're not at that point, and it's certainly not, things have not gone poorly enough yet at this point to think that that's where we are either. It's just a small hiccup.
Yeah, and I don't think that that's the right way to think of it. I mean, it's a possibility, but here's why, right? So number one, they're already QAing 12.5 and 12.6. They've been doing that for the last month. So they can see ahead. And two, so just because 12.4 is delayed, it's unlikely it's because it hit its local maximum. But 12.4, Elon did say that this is completely retrained, right? The whole neural net was retrained. That's why it's such a big leap from 12.3 to 12.4. Can you speak a little bit about that? What did he mean by retrain the neural nets?
Yeah. So when you're going through 12.3, we'll use that as the starting point. They when they first trained 12.3, they would have trained basically a full neural net from scratch, and they're not going to hold any of the weights. So, if you just think about a neural net, think about a giant web of connections between individual numbers. So, you might have 4 here and 3 next to it and 2 next to that. And then those can be connected to each other, or they could be connected around each other. And then you take that and multiply it by, 1,000,000. And that's the size of a neural net that you have. And what you want to do with that is you feed in data on one side and you say that data should produce this outcome, and we know what that outcome is supposed to be on the other side. And if you got it right, then you give it a high five. If it gets it wrong, then there's a system called back propagation where it goes back and it changes either those connections or the numbers, or both, and tries to then run it again and see if you get closer. You can, while you're doing that process, you can decide, hey, this specific portion of the neural net is the portion that I'm having problems with. I want to hold everything else constant, and I just want it to change this one little piece right here. And when they're doing, and this is very non-scientific way to describe this. It's not exact. It's not actually what I'm describing, but it helps people to at least get somewhat of an idea of what that means. And so when they're doing 12.3.1 and 12.3.2 and 12.3.3, like they're making small adjustments to the major overall architecture of the neural network that's making the decisions and turning those photons that are coming in into planned controlled outputs coming out. And so those are like what I'm describing, where they're holding most of it constant and they're just focusing on one part, and they're allowing the improvements that they're making to fix problems in a small portion of this big fat neural network. So when we go to 12.4, then we take all those constraints back off and we retrain from scratch, and we give the training process the ability to change everything again. So all the numbers and all the connections then become trainable and adjustable. And so you do that, and obviously, if you're allowed to change the entire network instead of just a small piece, then that's where you can have a very large difference in performance between that and the previous version. But that's also where you get into issues where you have surprising problems in a new part of the neural network with it as well. And so it's, the possibility for you to make a huge leap forward is big, and the possibility for you to find new ways that it's going to break is also big. And so that's when we're doing 12.3 to 12.4. That's what we're doing. When we're going from 12.4 to 12.5, that's what we're doing again. And so it's the QA process where we're trying to fix minor issues. That is where we're getting 12.3.5 and 6, 12.4. We'll get 12.4.1 probably. And then if they want to continue developing on 12.4, then we'll do 12.4.2 and 12.4.3. But we've already got 3 versions, so 12.4, 12.5, and 12.6. And each one of those is a full retrain. And so we've got 3, you can think about that like ChatGPT 3, and then they had ChatGPT 3.5, and they had ChatGPT 4, and then they're like different variations of each one of those. Well, 3, 3.5, 3 and 4 are complete retrains on the base model that all of the rest of ChatGPT is built on top of. And 3.5 is kind of one of those in the middles where they did some adjustments to some part of the base model, but not the whole thing.
See, I'm so glad that you explained all this, because the retraining allows the 5 to 10x improvement. Of course, when that happens, there's going to be little bugs. And so for me, this delay is not this massive concern. It's more like expected because of the massive jumps, because of the point release And so we'll see if that's the case, but we're anxiously waiting for this to drop. Thank you so much, Hans. Follow him on his YouTube channel. Check him out there. He's this kind of analysis is something you can't find many places. Thank you very much. Check him out at Hans C. Nelson. Thanks, Hans. Talk to you soon. Bye, everybody. I've created a website that is the most comprehensive resource for the Tesla investor. Please check it out. Simply go to my website at herbertong.com.